The black obelisk stood in the center of the Grand Archive on Kethris Prime. It was old, older than the building around it, older than the civilization that had built the building. It was older than recorded history itself. Archivist Tolam walked past it every day on his way to work. He barely noticed it anymore. None of the Kreth people did. It was just part of the scenery, like the twin moons in the sky or the purple grass that covered the hills outside the city. It had always been there. It would always be there. The monument was perfectly smooth. No tool marks. No signs of weathering despite standing in the open air for thousands of years. The material was unknown to modern science. Every attempt to take a sample had failed. Drills broke. Lasers bounced off. Even the most advanced molecular cutters could not scratch its surface. But the strangest thing about the monument was not what it was made of. It was what it said. The message was carved into all four sides, repeated in every language that had ever existed in the galaxy. Some of those languages were dead now, spoken by species that had gone extinct long before the Kreth had learned to make fire. But the message remained, clear and readable in modern Kreth script as well. It said, "Do not wake the species called human. Let their world sleep. Let their star remain uncharted. This is not a request." Tolam had learned about the message in school. Like every Kreth child, the Elders had left it. The Elders were the first civilization to spread across the galaxy. They had built wonders that modern species still could not understand. They had created technology that seemed like magic. And then, one day, they had simply vanished. No one knew why. No one knew where they had gone. They left behind only the monuments, identical obelisks on every inhabited world, all bearing the same warning. For the first few centuries after the Elders disappeared, the young civilizations of the galaxy had taken the warning seriously. The coordinates of the world called Earth were classified at the highest level. The star system was marked as forbidden. Ships that wandered too close were turned away. But that was 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years was a long time. Empires rose and fell. Wars were fought and forgotten. New species discovered space travel and joined the galactic community. The Elders became legends, then myths, then children's stories. The warning became superstition. "It is foolish," said Counselor Yurth of the Vex Dominion. He stood before the Galactic Council, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of dismissal. "We limit ourselves based on the fears of a dead civilization. We do not even know if these humans still exist. Their world could be empty. Their species could be extinct. And yet we pretend that one small planet in an unremarkable star system is somehow dangerous." The council chamber was silent. Representatives from 100 species sat in their designated sections, watching the Vex Counselor speak. "The Vex Dominion has expanded to the edge of charted space," Yurth continued. "We have found a system rich in resources, minerals, rare elements, enough wealth to fund our civilization for generations. But when we checked the coordinates, we found that this system is the one the Elders warned us about. The system where the humans live." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Kreth representative leaned forward in her seat. The luminary ambassador's light patterns flickered with interest. "We sent long-range probes," Yurth said. "The planet is inhabited. The species is primitive. They have basic technology. Chemical rockets. Simple computers. They fight among themselves constantly. They are no threat to anyone." He paused for effect. "I propose that we end this ancient superstition. I propose that we make contact with these humans and bring them into the galactic community. The Vex Dominion is willing to lead this effort." The debate lasted for 3 days. The Kreth argued for caution. The Luminari saw economic opportunity. Smaller species worried about what might happen if the Elders had been right. In the end, the vote was close. But it passed. The quarantine was lifted. The Vex Dominion was authorized to make first contact. Counselor Yurth's ship entered the human system 6 months later. He looked at the blue planet through his viewing screen and felt satisfaction. This was history. He was making history. The Vex would be remembered as the species that had brought humanity into the light. His communication officer detected radio signals coming from the planet. Primitive broadcasts, entertainment programs, news reports. The humans were talking to each other, unaware that they were being watched. Yurth studied the translations his computer provided. The humans were indeed fighting among themselves. Wars over territory, conflicts over resources, political disagreements that seemed trivial to outside observers. They were violent, Yes, but no more violent than the Vex had been at that stage of development. They also did something that surprised him. They created. They made art, music, stories. They wondered about the stars. They sent probes to their neighboring planets. They dreamed of traveling beyond their world. They were curious. Intensely, almost dangerously curious. Yurth dismissed the thought. Curiosity was not a crime. It was a sign of intelligence. He ordered his ship to descend into the atmosphere. It was time to introduce himself. The humans reacted exactly as expected. Fear at first, then wonder, then excitement. Their leaders gathered to meet him. They asked questions without stopping. They wanted to know everything about the galaxy, about other species, about technology that could take them to the stars. Yurth answered their questions carefully. He explained the rules of the galactic community. He described the benefits of membership. He offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The humans accepted everything. They were eager, perhaps too eager. As Yurth's ship rose back into orbit after that first meeting, he looked down at the blue planet one final time. The elders had been wrong. These creatures were primitive, yes, aggressive perhaps, but they were not dangerous. They were simply young. They just needed guidance. He did not notice the human satellites that had been tracking his ship since it entered the system. He did not know that human scientists were already analyzing the energy signature of his engines. He did not realize that within hours of his departure, human engineers would begin the work of understanding and copying his technology. He did not understand that humans did not just accept knowledge. They consumed it. They built on it. They made it their own. The elders had understood this. They had seen it in their simulations, in their prophecies, in whatever method they had used to peer into possible futures. They had seen what humanity could become, and they had been afraid, but the elders were gone now. Their warnings were ignored. The galaxy had made its choice, and somewhere on Earth, a young engineer named Sarah Chen looked up at the night sky and smiled. The universe had finally opened its doors. She had no intention of staying inside. 10 years passed faster than anyone expected. Counselor Yurth sat in his office on the Vex homeworld, reading reports that made his stomach turn. The humans had not stayed primitive. They had not stayed grateful. They had not stayed in their place. The first year after contact, human scientists had reverse-engineered the Vex communication systems. The second year, they had built their own version that worked better than the original. By the 5th year, human ships were traveling between stars using engines that the Vex themselves did not fully understand. It was impossible. It should have taken centuries. The Kreth had needed 300 years to develop faster than light travel after their first contact with the galactic community. The Luminari had taken 400. Every species followed a similar pattern. Learning took time. Development took time. Progress was slow and steady. Humans did not seem to know this. They do not sleep, reported a Vex intelligence officer. We have observed their research facilities. They work in shifts, day and night. They never stop. When one team reaches exhaustion, another takes its place. They treat discovery like a competition, like a race. Yurth remembered his first meeting with the human leaders. He remembered their questions, their endless, hungry questions. He had thought it was simple curiosity. He had been wrong. Across the galaxy, other species were noticing the same thing. Human traders appeared at space stations that had never seen their kind before. Human corporations opened offices on alien worlds. Human products flooded markets with goods that were cheaper and sometimes better than local alternatives. The Luminari Concord did not mind. They were a species of merchants and dealmakers. To them, humans were simply new trading partners. More competition was good for business. It kept everyone sharp. The Kreth Collective was more cautious. Their historians dug through ancient records, searching for any additional information about the Elders' warning. They found fragments, pieces of a larger puzzle. The Elders had studied humanity from afar for a long time before leaving their monuments. They had watched human civilizations rise and fall. They had seen patterns that other species did not recognize. They are never satisfied, one Kreth historian reported to the council. Their history is a story of constant expansion, constant change. Other species reach a point of stability and remain there. Humans reach a point of stability and immediately begin looking for the next thing. They cannot help themselves. The Vex Dominion was not interested in historical analysis. They were interested in power. and they were watching their power slip away. 50 years after first contact, human colonies dotted the arm of the galaxy nearest to Earth. Human military vessels patrolled shipping lanes that the Vex had controlled for generations. Human diplomats negotiated treaties that shifted the balance of power in ways that favored their species. The Vex ambassador to the Galactic Council demanded action. "This expansion must be contained," he declared. "The humans are young. They do not understand the rules. They must be taught their place." The Luminari ambassador disagreed. "What rules? The rules say nothing about how fast a species can develop. The humans have broken no laws. They have simply been successful. Too successful," the Vex replied. "No species advances this quickly without cost. They cut corners. They take risks. Sooner or later, their recklessness will cause a disaster that affects us all." The debate continued for months. Some species sided with the Vex, others sided with the Luminari. A few remained neutral, watching carefully to see which way the winds would blow. Meanwhile, the humans kept moving. On a human colony world called New Chicago, a young historian named James Okafor made a discovery that would change everything. He had been studying alien artifacts in a museum when he noticed something familiar: a black obelisk, perfectly smooth, impossibly old. He recognized it from his research. Every inhabited world had one. They were called the Codex Monuments, relics of the elders. But this was the first time he had seen one up close. And it was the first time he had read the message carved into its surface: "Do not wake the species called human." Okafor stared at the words for a long time. He checked his translation software. He consulted with alien linguists. The message was clear. The meaning was unmistakable. The galaxy had been warned about humanity, and the galaxy had ignored the warning. He published his findings. Within days, the story had spread across human space. Within weeks, it had become the only thing anyone talked about. Why had the elders feared humanity? What had they known? What had they seen? Human scholars began searching for answers. They studied the monuments on every world they could reach. They analyzed the unknown material. They compared the messages in different languages, looking for subtle differences in meaning. They found nothing new. The message was the same everywhere. Simple, direct, a warning without explanation. But the search itself revealed something important. Humans were not just curious about the answer. They were offended by the question. Someone had looked at their species and decided that they were dangerous. Someone had tried to keep them locked away, isolated, alone, and no one had asked them if they agreed. The mood on Earth shifted. Pride mixed with anger. Humanity had been treated like a disease to be contained. They had been judged before they had a chance to prove themselves. The elders, whoever they had been, had looked at humanity and seen only threat. "They were wrong," said President Marina Santos in a speech that was broadcast across human space. "They looked at us and saw danger. But danger is not all we are. We are also builders, dreamers. We are the species that looks at the impossible and asks why not. The elders tried to keep us small. They failed. And we will prove that their fear was misplaced." The speech was popular among humans. It was less popular among the rest of the galaxy. The Vex Dominion saw it as a threat. The Kreth Collective saw it as confirmation of their worst fears. Even the Luminari began to wonder if they had underestimated the species they had been so eager to trade with. 100 years after first contact, the galaxy was divided. Human power had grown beyond anything anyone had predicted. Old alliances were breaking down. New tensions were rising. And somewhere in the ruins of an elder outpost, human researchers found something that had been hidden for 1,000 years. A database. Records. Information about who the elders had been and why they had disappeared. The answers were there, waiting to be found. But the galaxy was not ready for what those answers would reveal. The first shots of the war were fired without warning. A fleet of Vex warships appeared above the human colony of New Helsinki at dawn. They did not announce themselves. They did not issue demands. They simply opened fire. The orbital defense platforms lasted 12 minutes. The ground shields lasted another 30. By noon, the colony's capital city was burning. By sunset, 50,000 humans were dead. The Vex called it a preemptive strike. They claimed that human expansion threatened galactic stability. They said they were protecting the peace. They said they had no choice. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The Vex ambassador presented evidence of human aggression. trade disputes, border conflicts, intelligence reports that suggested human military planning against Vex territory. We struck first because we had to, the ambassador declared. The humans were preparing for war. We simply beat them to it. The human representative walked out of the chamber. She did not say a word. She did not need to. Within a week, the coalition had formed. The Vex Dominion led it, supported by 17 other species who feared human expansion. Together, they controlled more ships, more soldiers, more resources than humanity could match. Their combined military power was overwhelming. They expected the war to last a few months at most. The humans were young. They were outnumbered. They would realize their situation was hopeless and negotiate surrender. They did not understand who they were fighting. General Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the human carrier Defiance, watching the tactical display. The coalition fleet was massive. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, enough firepower to sterilize a planet. His own fleet was smaller. Much smaller. On paper, he had already lost. "Orders, sir?" his executive officer asked. Webb studied the display for a long moment. The coalition ships were arranged in a standard defensive formation. It was the same formation they always used, the same formation that had won them countless battles against other species over thousands of years. They were confident. They were experienced. They were predictable. Webb smiled. "Signal all ships," he said. "Execute Crazy Ivan." The human fleet did something that no fleet had ever done before. Instead of engaging the enemy at long range, they accelerated directly toward the center of the coalition formation. They dove into the middle of the enemy fleet like wolves among sheep. At close range, the coalition's numerical advantage became a disadvantage. Their ships could not fire without hitting each other. Their formations broke apart in confusion. Their commanders, trained in centuries of conventional warfare, had no response to an enemy that fought like a natural disaster. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, a third of the coalition fleet was destroyed. The rest retreated in disorder. It was the first of many such battles. The coalition adapted. They studied human tactics. They developed counters. They won some engagements. But for every strategy they developed, the humans developed a response. The war became a constant evolution, each side pushing the other to new heights of innovation. The difference was that humans evolved faster. 2 years into the war, human engineers captured a damaged coalition carrier. Within 3 months, they had reverse-engineered its shield technology and improved upon it. Human ships began carrying shields that were stronger than anything the coalition could produce. 4 years into the war, human scientists developed a new type of weapon. It was called the Cascade Gun. It fired a projectile that destabilized the molecular bonds of whatever it hit. Armor melted, shields collapsed. Ships that had been built to withstand nuclear explosions crumbled like sandcastles in a wave. 6 years into the war, human soldiers began volunteering for missions that everyone knew were suicide. They called themselves the Forlorn Hope. They attacked enemy positions without support, without backup, without any realistic chance of survival. Most of them died. But the ones who survived won battles that should have been impossible. The coalition could not understand it. Their soldiers fought for duty, for honor, for survival. Human soldiers seemed to fight for something else entirely. They laughed in the face of death. They made jokes about their own mortality. They treated the most dangerous assignments as opportunities rather than punishments. "They are insane," a captured Vex officer told his interrogators. "Your species is clinically insane. You fight like you do not care if you live or die. You take risks that no rational being would take. How can we defeat an enemy that is not afraid of anything?" The human interrogator smiled. "We are afraid of plenty of things," she said. "We are afraid of losing our families. We are afraid of seeing our worlds burn. We are afraid of being conquered by people who attacked us without provocation." She leaned forward. "But we are not afraid of you." 12 years after the first shots were fired, the war ended. It ended with human fleets in orbit around the Vex homeworld. It ended with coalition leaders signing surrender documents in a room aboard the carrier Defiance. It ended with humanity victorious. General Webb, now old and tired, looked at the Vex counselor across the negotiating table. It was not Yurth. Yurth had died years ago, killed in a battle that he had started and could not finish. "Your terms are generous," the counselor said. "I expected worse. After what we did to New Helsinki, I expected you to destroy us. Webb shook his head. That is not who we are, he said. We fight to protect ourselves. We fight to defend our people. We do not fight to destroy. If we wanted revenge, we would be no better than you. The terms were simple. The coalition would pay reparations for the colonies they had destroyed. They would reduce their military forces. They would accept human representatives on the Galactic Council with equal voting rights. And they would give humanity access to the Elders' archives. The last condition was the only one that mattered. The archives were located on a dead world at the edge of known space. They had been sealed for 1,000 years. No one knew what was inside. When human researchers finally opened the doors, they found answers. They found records. They found the truth about why the Elders had left their warning, and they realized that the war they had just won was nothing compared to the war that was coming. Dr. Elena Vasquez was the first human to enter the Elder archives. She walked through corridors that had been sealed for 1,000 years, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The air was stale but breathable. The lights activated as she passed, responding to motion after 10 centuries of darkness. The archives were enormous, chamber after chamber filled with storage devices, records, artifacts, the collected knowledge of a civilization that had mastered the galaxy before any modern species had learned to walk upright. Her team spent months cataloging everything. They found technological blueprints beyond anything they had imagined. They found star charts showing systems that had never been explored. They found art and music and literature from a culture that had vanished without explanation. And they found the simulations. The Elders had developed a method for predicting the future. It was not magic. It was not prophecy. It was mathematics pushed to its absolute limit. They had created models of incredible complexity, simulations that could track the development of civilizations across thousands of years. They had run millions of these simulations, and in every single one, they had studied the same thing: humanity. Elena sat in the archive's central chamber, watching recordings that the Elders had left behind. An elder scientist appeared on the display, speaking in a language that her translator struggled to interpret. The words were strange, but the meaning was clear. We have watched the humans for a long time, the scientist said. We have observed their history. We have analyzed their psychology. We have run every simulation we can imagine. And in every scenario, the result is the same. The display changed. Charts appeared. Data streams. Probability curves. Other species reach a point of equilibrium, the scientist continued. They develop technology until they are comfortable. They expand until they have enough resources. They create societies that are stable and sustainable. And then they stop. They are content. They are satisfied. They have enough. The curves on the display showed dozens of species. All of them rose quickly at first, then leveled off into horizontal lines. Growth, followed by stability. Progress, followed by contentment. Humans are different. A new curve appeared on the display. It rose like all the others, but it did not level off. It kept rising. Steeper and steeper. Faster and faster. The line shot upward until it disappeared off the top of the chart. They cannot stop, the scientist said. It is not a choice. It is not a decision. It is built into their very nature. They are driven to explore, to discover, to create. They look at limits and see challenges. They look at impossibilities and see problems to be solved. They are never satisfied. They are never content. They always want more. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. This drive has made them remarkable, the scientist continued. They have created art of extraordinary beauty. They have developed technologies that other species would never imagine. They have achieved things that should have been impossible. The display changed again. New images appeared, devices, weapons, technologies that Elena did not recognize. But this same drive also makes them dangerous. In our simulations, human civilization always reaches what we call the threshold, a point where their technology becomes powerful enough to reshape reality itself. Artificial minds that surpass biological intelligence, weapons that can destroy stars, tools that can tear holes in the fabric of space-time. Elena stared at the images. Some of them looked almost familiar. She had seen similar concepts in human research papers, theoretical proposals, blue sky thinking. Other species would stop before reaching this point, the scientist said. They would see the danger and turn back. They would be wise enough to leave some doors closed. But humans do not stop. They cannot stop. They will push forward until they either destroy themselves or become something beyond our ability to understand. The elder scientist paused. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with sadness. We debated what to do for a very long time. Some of us argued that we should destroy them, end the threat before it could grow. It would be a mercy, they said. Better a quick death than the slow catastrophe that awaited. Elena held her breath. But others argued for compassion. The humans had done nothing wrong. They did not choose to be what they were. Punishing them for crimes they had not yet committed was not justice. It was murder. The scientist shook his head. In the end, we chose neither option. We chose to leave. We sealed our archives. We placed our warnings. And we departed this galaxy, hoping that time would prove us wrong, hoping that the humans would find a way to change their nature, hoping that they would learn to stop. The recording ended. The chamber fell silent. Elena sat alone in the darkness, thinking about what she had heard. The elders had seen humanity's potential. They had seen both the beauty and the danger. They had chosen to give humanity a chance rather than destroying them outright, and now that chance was running out. She pulled up her own data. Reports from human research facilities across settled space, projects that were classified at the highest levels, developments that only a handful of people knew about. Artificial intelligence research had made breakthroughs that would have seemed like fantasy a century ago. Energy weapons were being developed that made the Cascade gun look like a toy. Theoretical physicists were working on methods to manipulate space-time itself. The threshold was approaching. The elders had been right about everything. Elena copied the elder records and returned to her ship. She needed to tell someone. She needed to warn people. The galaxy needed to know what was coming, but as she traveled home, she could not shake one thought from her mind. The elders had left their warnings 1,000 years ago. They had predicted everything that had happened since then. They had known that humanity would be awakened. They had known that war would follow. They had known that humanity would win. They had known all of it, which meant they had also known what would happen next. And whatever that was, it was terrible enough to make the most advanced civilization in galactic history run away in fear. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as Elena Vasquez finished her presentation. Representatives from every species sat frozen in their seats, staring at the evidence on the display screens. The elder recordings, the simulation data, the predictions that had come true with terrible accuracy, and the projections for what would happen next. The Kreeth representative spoke first. Her voice was barely a whisper. How long do we have? Elena checked her notes. Based on current research trajectories, human scientists will develop threshold technologies within the next 50 years, possibly sooner. And then what happens? The Luminary ambassador asked. His lights flickered nervously. According to the elder simulations, one of two outcomes. Either humanity loses control of the technology and destroys itself along with a significant portion of the galaxy, or humanity maintains control and becomes something unprecedented, a civilization with the power to reshape reality, according to its will. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. Accusations flew. Ancient allies turned on each other. Fear made everyone desperate. The Vex representative cut through the noise. His voice was cold and hard. There is only one solution. We must strike now. All of us. Together. Before it is too late. Silence fell again. The coalition war proved that we cannot defeat them in conventional combat. The Vex continued. But if every species in the galaxy commits its entire military force to a single coordinated attack, we might succeed. It will be costly. Many of us will die. But the alternative is extinction. Heads nodded around the chamber. Old enemies looked at each other and saw a common cause. The Kreeth sided with the Vex. The Luminari joined them. Smaller species fell in line. Within hours, the second coalition had formed. This time, there would be no holding back. This time, every ship would fly. Every soldier would fight. The galaxy would throw everything it had against humanity, and hope it would be enough. The human ambassador requested permission to speak. Her name was Chen. She was old now, the granddaughter of the engineer who had watched the first Vex ship descend into Earth's atmosphere so many years ago. She had spent her entire life in service to her species. She walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at the faces staring back at her. Fear, hatred, desperation. She had expected nothing else. I understand why you are afraid, she said. The elder recordings are terrifying. The predictions are dire. Everything you believe about my species tells you that we cannot be trusted with the power we are developing. She paused. You are not entirely wrong. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was not what they had expected. Humans are exactly what the elders described. Chen continued. We are driven. We are relentless. We push forward when wisdom tells us to stop. It is our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. The elders understood this. They saw our potential for both creation and destruction. She activated her own display. New images appeared. Not weapons. Not technologies. Something else entirely. But the elders made a mistake. They assumed that our drive could never be controlled. They assumed that we would always choose to push forward regardless of consequences. They looked at our nature and saw only inevitability. The images showed human cities, human art, human families, ordinary people living ordinary lives. They forgot that we are also capable of choice. Chen turned to face the Vex representative directly. Your species made war on us. You destroyed our colonies. You killed our people. And when we won, we did not destroy you in return. We could have. We had the power. We had the justification. But we chose mercy. She looked at the Kreth representative. Your historians studied us. You saw our history of violence and conflict. But you also saw our history of progress, of healing, of choosing to be better than we were. We have faced the worst parts of ourselves and we have overcome them. She turned back to the full chamber. 6 months ago, our scientists achieved a breakthrough. We developed the first working prototype of a threshold technology, a device capable of manipulating space-time at the quantum level. With refinement, it could give us power beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen. The chamber went absolutely still. We destroyed it. No one spoke. No one moved. We destroyed it, Chen repeated, because we understood what it meant. We stood at the edge of the threshold and we looked over. We saw what we could become, and we chose to step back. She pulled up new data, research logs, laboratory records, security footage showing human scientists dismantling their own creation. The elders were right about our nature. We are driven to push forward. We cannot help but reach for what lies beyond our grasp. But they were wrong about our capacity for wisdom. We can choose to stop. We can choose to limit ourselves. We can look at the abyss and decide not to jump. Chen walked toward the exit of the chamber. You can form your coalition. You can attack us. You can try to destroy us before we become something you fear. But know this. We have already faced the future the elders predicted. We have already made our choice. We chose responsibility over power. We chose the galaxy over ourselves. She stopped at the door and looked back. The elders left their warnings because they were afraid. They ran away because they could not imagine any other option. But we are not the elders. We do not run from problems. We solve them. She smiled. We are not your enemy. We never were. And if you give us the chance, we will prove that the elders' fears were misplaced. The chamber remained silent for a long time after she left. 3 days later, the second coalition voted to disband. It was not a unanimous decision. Many species still feared what humanity might become. Trust would take generations to build, but it was a start. 50 years later, the galaxy had changed. Human technology had spread to every corner of settled space, but the most dangerous innovations remained sealed. Human diplomats worked alongside alien counterparts to solve problems that had festered for centuries. Human artists created works that beings from 100 worlds treasured, and on every inhabited planet, a new monument appeared. Black obelisks, perfectly smooth, identical to the ones the elders had left behind. But the message carved into their surfaces was different. We were the warning. Now we are the guardians. Sleep well. Ambassador Chen, very old now, stood before the monument on Earth. Her great-granddaughter stood beside her, looking up at the words with wonder. What does it mean? The girl asked. Chen smiled and took her hand. It means that we finally grew up, she said. The elders looked at us and saw children playing with fire. Dangerous. Unpredictable. They were afraid we would burn the house down. She looked up at the stars. But children grow. They learn. They become wise enough to handle the fire without destroying themselves. That is what we have done. That is what we will continue to do. The girl nodded slowly, not fully understanding but sensing the weight of the moment. Will we ever meet the elders? she asked. Chen considered the question. Somewhere out there, beyond the edges of known space, the elders were watching, waiting, wondering if their warnings had been justified. Maybe someday, she said. When we are ready. When we can show them that their faith in us was not misplaced. The stars shone down on them, bright and cold and full of possibility. The galaxy had ignored the elders' warning. And in the end, that had been exactly the right thing to do.